Welcome back, everyone. I'm thrilled to get us started on the Women Who Code Lightning Talks for today. So today, first we have Joey Rosenberg, President, Product and Communications for Women Who Code. And then I will come back after this to introduce our next speaker.
Hello, Women Who Code. It's great to be here with you today at the Block Data Pi Dev Summit, exploring best practices and pro tips around these exciting technologies. I'm Joey Rosenberg, President, Product and Communications here at Women Who Code, and I am thrilled to share with you some exciting updates about Women Who Code's technical products. If you've been following our technology developments, you already know that Women Who Code has been building something really special for our community. Since 2021, we've been focused on our biggest technical build yet. We set out to create a new digital member experience for Women Who Code that brings together some of the best elements of our incredible community. Today, I'm thrilled to announce that we have officially launched the Women Who Code new web app with a customized member experience portal that brings the best of Women Who Code to you wherever you are. Let me be the first to invite you to womenwhocode.com. Every day, Women Who Code produces technical events, content, and resources, and leverages partnerships with leading tech companies and boot camps to share job opportunities, scholarships, and career advice that can help you level up in tech. Now it's easier than ever to find the resources and network you need to excel in your technology career. We've infused the energy that you feel when you interact with community in spaces like this one, so that it comes right to the forefront as you explore the site. You'll find great content full of inspiration as you learn about Women Who Code and navigate our blog, our podcast, and our communities. You'll find great scholarships, ticket discounts, and giveaways for industry conferences and volunteer opportunities so that you can get involved with the Women Who Code community. The most exciting new feature is our member dashboard. Now, when you join Women Who Code, you'll be taken to a special members-only part of the website where you'll find a customized dashboard just for you. Thanks to the power of data, the more you interact with the site and build up your profile, the more customized your recommendations become. From the member dashboard, you can explore 3 great areas right now. Events, where you can explore, save, and register for online and in-person events. Jobs, where you can discover and apply for jobs with companies that demonstrate alignment with our mission by supporting our community. And resources. You can tap into technical resources that can support your continuous learning in the industry. And we're just getting started. There are more features in the works that will support you to connect with your community and help you keep leveling up in tech. Be sure to go over to womenwhocode.com. And if you were a member on the old website, you'll need to make a new account. So hit the join button, create your profile, and get started. I couldn't think of a better place to debut this new site than right here at Block Data Pi. The new member experience is built on an idea. What if we could harness the power of data to create a better member experience? To achieve this, we had a tall order ahead. At the outset, we had 4 goals: decouple our monolithic code base, bring forward the energy of our community, make it easier to access the most valued member benefits, and use data to create a customized user experience. Let's unpack these a little bit. First, let's talk code base. To create efficiency in our platform and be able to create technical solutions to better serve different user groups with very different needs, we needed to decouple our monolithic Rails code base, separating our front end from our back end. And we needed to simplify our authentication tool while making it more secure and more robust. To achieve the latter, we decommissioned our bespoke authentication database, and we incorporated Auth0 to authenticate members into our new portal. Second, we wanted the experience to really reflect the energy that you feel when you attend Women Who Code events like this one, or like the thousands that have been held in communities around the world. Our old site just didn't reflect our community. We love the energy of the new site, and we hope you do too. Third, we wanted to make it easier for members to access the most valued member benefits. Our starting point was research. We conducted research in a lot of different ways to find out what our community finds the most valuable. We spoke with members, we looked at user engagement data, we conducted surveys, and we identified the top 7 benefits that members say help them most in navigating their careers and rising in the tech industry. In its debut, the member dashboard features 3: events, coding resources, and job opportunities. We'll continue to develop the dashboard and bring even more content forward, and we'll keep you posted as well as seek your feedback in future conferences and summits. Finally, we aimed to harness the power of data. Now, you know that data is being created with every click and every action, and it tells a story. Used in the right way, it can lead to a really rewarding experience for users. We set out to be able to connect each technologist to the content that would be most valuable to them. So for example, if you're a Python engineer who lives in Seattle, we want to be able to prioritize events, resources, and jobs that focus on Python and are produced by your local network or the technical tracks that you've joined. A cloud engineer might have really different preferences. So we've developed a recommendation engine that connects Women Who Code's content to you based on career experience, tech stacks, areas of interest, location, and job search preferences. Our onboarding experience asks members to share a bit about themselves so that we can make these connections. Over time, as the recommendation engine learns, it can make smarter suggestions based on the actions of peers who have similar profiles. Building the recommendations engine has been a really interesting piece of work. I thought it might be helpful to share a few of the challenges we faced and how we overcame them in case you find yourself working on a project like this. One of the first things our product team had to do was to understand the kinds of things we'd recommend if a member were connecting with someone from our team and all of the different variables that might come up. For example, if a mobile engineer wants to participate in Women Who Code, they might want to attend an event online focused on Swift, or they might want to go to an in-person event to connect with other Android developers. They might be looking for a new mobile developer role in the city where they live, or they might be thinking about moving. They might be only considering remote jobs and are looking to connect with companies with distributed and remote teams. We mapped out a matrix of if-then statements that really capture the most frequently occurring scenarios to help create recommendations for members based on their personal needs and preferences. Next, we created a tagging system that could be shared across member profiles, events, coding resources, and jobs. This was important because our previous site used freeform data entry and our system held many versions of the same thing in all of our tables. Third, we had to consider the process and the admin user experience. How will we get all of those tags in place? We're still working through some of those processes, and we're working with key stakeholders to make sure that is as seamless and as organic as possible. To do this, we have to really understand all of the different entry points and make sure that the new processes fit into the workflows that are already in place. Finally, we have to maintain the trust of our community. Whenever you collect, process, and analyze data for any reason, you have a responsibility to your users to maintain their privacy, to tell them how you will use their data, and to not use their data in any other way. If you want to learn more about this topic, Naomi Freeman, chair of the Women Who Code Technology community, is going to speak about the rights and responsibilities of equity-centered data governance in her upcoming talk. Before I go, I'd like to say a huge thank you and an applaud to our development and product teams, including our tech partners, Tyrannosaurus Tech, Tech Systems, and Lime CUDA. Many of our team members are here today, and you might be able to catch them in a networking session. Also, a huge thank you to Team Teal and our community for your continuous feedback. More than 500 of you signed up to give feedback in our alpha and beta testing rounds. We looked at every comment and continue to iterate on the site with you in mind. Also, if you're building out your technical team and wondering how to make sure that your jobs are showing up on the member dashboard, head over to womenwhocode.com and hit the hire button so you can hire from our incredibly talented technical community. Our user happiness team for the job board supports companies who are committed to building a diverse, equitable, inclusive talent pipeline and can be reached directly at jobs@womenwhocode.com. We hope you love the new site. And either way, we're looking forward to your feedback so that we can keep building something that is game-changing for our community.
Thank you so much, Joey, for walking us through the new site and all of the work that it took to get there. It's my pleasure to introduce Naomi Freeman. As Joey mentioned, Naomi is the chair of the tech committee and a board advisor, and Naomi will discuss the importance of developing a DEI-driven data culture. So welcome, Naomi.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good day. I'm so excited to be here at the Block Data Pi Summit today. My name is Naomi Freeman, and I am the chair of the Strategy and Technology Committee, as well as a board advisor here at Women Who Code. I'm always excited to be able to chat with the Women Who Code community, but today is really special for me since I started as a fellow at Women Who Code in 2020 as one of 2 blockchain and data science fellows. So the 2 of us together ran both blockchain and data science. So to see these communities evolve so much over time, it really brings a special kind of joy. With that in mind, today I want to shed light on a crucial topic: how data governance is key to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion as we develop our future digital environments. And I'm going to think both about AI and blockchain as we go through this. Specifically, I want to discuss the critical role of data privacy, safety, AI ethics, and regulatory compliance in building technology landscapes that uphold DEI principles, which, as you know, are at the heart of all that Women Who Code community does and believes in. My hope today is that you can take some of these principles and ideas back into your own tech stack, as well as digital communities that you're building elsewhere. So the first time that I really started to think about data privacy, and I also started to think about myself as a technologist superpower, in the worst way, in the mad scientist way, was when I was building a social housing app in Toronto, in Canada, almost 10, 15 years ago. It's been a while. It was one of my first projects where I got to be a lead. I was a technical lead. I was also making business decisions, talking to the community. It was sort of this pair between civic needs. So we had municipality people there. Toronto's obviously a very big municipality. It's a population of over 3.5 million people. And these hackathon folks who were doing open data, civic data approaches, technologists, product people, whoever we could get our hands on to kind of work together to say, what can we do with some data in civic settings to empower people to do stuff, whatever stuff that was. It was still early days. We were still trying to figure out what stuff we can do with data. So this data set that I had was for social housing, and the building addresses were not even there. So there's hundreds, thousands of social housing buildings in Toronto, and we were just given coordinates of where they were. So we had to go, and the first step, the first unbelievably long period of time was simply figuring out where all these buildings existed so that we could map them digitally. And this is one of those things where you're using your technology, you're feeling really smart, you're learning how to throw things across from front to back, and we're building new stuff. It's great. But then what did we want to do with that data? What we wanted to do, because everyone in the community was using paper forms, is we wanted to create a repair system for these social housing communities online. Now, we did understand that the current form, the paper form, was a whole bunch of images, so that people could just select on their little paper form, yes, I circled my kitchen sink, that's what needs fixed. Because there were lots of different languages and lots of different levels of literacy. There were also a lot of different age groups. So the simplest way for them to ensure everyone could access these data forms, well, they were going to become data forms. The simplest way to be able to access these forms was for people to be able to circle things that would be in their apartment. And then they would take these forms and drop them in a basket, and some manager of 3 or 4 buildings would come and do the repair at some point. So me and my team, we thought, hey, you know what's a great idea? If we do make these forms into data, if we make it online, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more efficient, it's going to be more effective. Perfect. So we built this system. We talked to some community leaders, we talked to some folks who worked with the municipality, they agreed, let's put things online. because being online is the best way to do things. And we launched it. And nobody was using the system. We're talking hundreds and thousands of buildings, like a huge, huge, huge population. The population for social housing in Toronto is higher than the population of some medium-sized cities in England. Is something I've discovered as I travel and I speak a bit about this. So we're talking a lot of folks. So we're wondering, did we lose the webpage? We're not accessing this. So I decided we should just go into the community and start talking. What's going on? Have you seen the social housing, repair system? Do you have access to a computer? So we went to the library because we figured in that community, maybe computer access was a challenge. So we went to the library to see if there were folks who would go to the library and could use a computer, what they thought of this system. And what we found out is that they didn't trust us. They didn't trust the system, and they were pretty sure if they put their information in online that they had a broken window or they had a lock that was not fixed, that it would reveal to the entire world and their neighbors what their address was, what the problem was, and how they could break into their house. And most of them were certain that someone was going to come and steal their TV, which is a really high price, high ticket item that's difficult to replace. So they didn't want to give us their information, and they would rather go and talk to the community manager, write on their own piece of paper with limited English language skills or limited literacy. They would rather write on their own customized piece of paper, because we had taken the paper forms so that they could go online. They would rather do that than touch our system. And we knew we had data separation. We knew we had encryption. We knew there were APIs. We knew that there was an internal system versus an external one, because journalists also wanted this information. So we needed to aggregate and anonymize a whole bunch of this data so that other folks could get a picture of what was going on and create accountability, transparency for the municipal government for where the repairs were at, how much time it was taking. We wanted that information available while still protecting the information of the people in the social housing who obviously were vulnerable, and now we've learned obviously had concerns. So how do you build and develop a culture that supports these vulnerable folks? Who is the most vulnerable person, either in your current membership, in your own internal team, in the clients you serve? When we're thinking about how do we develop a diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI driven data culture, we want to think about who this could have the most possible impact on in the worst possible way. And this comes from my experience building this project and realizing that these folks had a real and genuine concern that we have been sort of protected from in the busyness of I'm building a technology. So the other thing I would like you to think about today is, what is data? What is data? I very quickly learned in this project and across projects since then that data doesn't exist. Data is just a point of information, part of a story of someone else's life. So when you collect data in your organization, that's your team members' names and the size of their families or their education. That's their real human story. So when we think about data governance, when we think about data manipulation, let's remember that at the core, data is just representing and describing somebody out there who we are responsible for as we build these systems. There are a number of key pillars for a good data governance, regardless of the policies behind it. You can look at these in a bunch of different ways, and you can think about which pillars are most important for your company. But protecting individuals' privacy and securing their data is paramount to fostering safe digital environments. Implementing robust data privacy measures, such as, for example, obtaining informed consent. Do they know what they're consenting to when they sign this paper? anonymization, encryption. All of these safeguard individuals' personal information. By prioritizing privacy, we can work together to maintain and grow our trust-based digital communities in ways that every individual feels safe to express their unique identities and perspectives. I'm sure many of you know, but the legal and regulatory landscape surrounding data and privacy is rapidly evolving. Organizations must not only comply with existing regulations, but also stay ahead of emerging guidelines to maintain this safety and security in their digital communities. Robust data governance frameworks can help us meet those regulatory compliance needs and provide a foundation so that we can continue navigating the complex landscape effectively. In the realm of technology, blockchain and artificial intelligence have emerged as transformative forces. These technologies can significantly benefit from and contribute to effective data governance practices. So let's take a quick look at how these intersect, overlap, and work together to promote some of these ideals for data governance, like transparency, trust, and accountability. Beginning with blockchain. Blockchain is very, very good at helping us with data integrity, transparency, and auditability throughout the data lifecycle. Blockchain at its core as a technology allows for the creation of tamper-proof data records. Theoretically. We're not talking about quantum computing today. Anyway, blockchain's technology can provide integrity and prove the authenticity of data, which can help us to reduce the risk of data manipulation or unauthorized changes. So once someone consents to something, we want to make sure that that thing doesn't change. Blockchain is great at doing that. It also enables secure and transparent data sharing between multiple stakeholders. So if we have a smart contract, we can automate a data sharing agreement, ensuring that the data access and the usage adhere to predefined rules and permissions. You don't want someone handing over information and they say, sure, you can use this information and post it on a wall. But someone comes in the room and sees it on the wall and takes it. I mean, now you've broken the chain. Now you've broken the consent. You can't do that. Blockchain ensures that no one's going to do that, that the thing that has been posted or shared is only going to ever have the same rules as when that first occurred. Blockchain's distributed ledger also allows us to look at a piece of data and allows us to see its family tree. So where it came from, how it came to be where it is. This feature is particularly valuable for data governance, as it allows organizations to maintain an auditable trail of data, which is often the key for compliance with regulatory requirements. Thinking about AI in this, AI is of course fueled by vast amounts of data and has the potential to drive innovation and transformative outcomes. What we've explored before in various talks at WWCode is that AI can also perpetuate biases and can sometimes compromise privacy or even erode trust when it is running without effective data governance. In some discussions today, even beyond Women Who Code, I often hear from folks that AI and blockchain, given what we're thinking about, are actually technologies with a particular conflict of interest between them. However, after spending a couple of years myself working as a fellow with both the blockchain and the AI communities at the same time, I strongly believe that we can integrate AI, data governance, and emerging technologies like blockchain. Combined with blockchain's abilities to create a great data management foundation with data that is complete, correct, and clear, applying AI processes to that data can be approached in a way that continues to drive DEI data culture forward. From my perspective, there are 3 key ways that we can build AI with this DEI focus to create membership safety online. So that's our larger goal, right? How do we keep folks safe while they're online in the digital communities and spaces that we create? In AI, data governance practices like data quality assessments and bias detection can help us to identify and address biases in the training data that we use for our algorithms. This helps to ensure fairness, inclusivity, and to avoid discriminatory outcomes, as well as mitigate the bias in our algorithms overall. Second, being sure to choose data governance frameworks that prioritize privacy can support the development of privacy-preserving AI techniques like federated learning or differential privacy. Both of these allow AI models to be trained on decentralized and encrypted data while maintaining data privacy. Finally, data governance promotes transparency and accountability in AI systems. By making use of explainable AI, for example, documenting our data sources, processing methodologies, and model training techniques, organizations can ensure that AI outputs are explainable and understandable for everyone. What was done at each step of the process, and why was that done? This allows us to go back in and create interventions where we need them, if we need to. Balancing the transparency of blockchain with the privacy requirements of sensitive data is a complex task. Organizations must carefully design blockchain solutions to uphold privacy rights while adhering to the regulatory obligations. Ensuring compatibility and interoperability between different blockchain platforms, AI systems, and data governance frameworks is essential for seamless integration. Developing industry standards and best practices through data governance or other frameworks can help us to facilitate this interoperability and collaboration in the best way possible. Data governance truly is the bedrock upon which DEI in these future digital environments is built. The safety, security, and fair treatment of individuals within these environments hinges on the daily data and privacy that is executed in all of these smaller pieces. As technology leads, ethics, promote good data governance, privacy, and regulatory compliance. By doing so, we can create a future where digital environments empower diversity, equity, inclusion. For me, this is a really important part of my work. I like to approach things and say, rather than thinking about an either-or situation, either we have robust systems or we have DEI, I like to think about the both and. How do we both create this safe environment and do it in a robust way? How can we use some of these security principles to empower this other thing that we want to do? At Women Who Code, we believe that technology leaders bear the responsibility to champion good data governance, privacy, and ethics. We must embed these principles into the core of our organization's strategies, operations, and technologies. By doing so, we can drive positive change, cultivate inclusive environments online, and contribute to the development of equitable digital ecosystems. I hope that you are able to consider some of the ways that we can move these forward and think about what it means when we implement a data governance policy so that we can prioritize diverse representation in data collection and analysis, or what it means to establish a data governance framework that actively identifies and addresses biases in the algorithms and decision-making processes. You can pick one and prioritize that as the first place to start within your own DEI-driven data culture. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really excited to see what you build, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
Welcome back, Joey.
Hi, Anna. Thank you. It's great to be here. Today's a really exciting day. It's the first time that we are meeting with the community since the website launched just a week ago or so now. And so I'm really excited for everyone to be joining. Head over to womenwhocode.com and hit the join button. A couple questions we get. Is there any cost associated with that? No, a Women Who Code membership is made possible by partners and donors. And so when you hit that join button, it is free to make an account. We saw some great feedback in the chat about that experience being really seamless. We also saw that someone didn't get their confirmation email. So if you have any trouble, definitely let us know. Our senior user happiness manager, Jody Lohr, is in reception and working the help desk today. She can make sure that you have everything you need to get access to the site.
Thanks. There was one question that stood out to me, and I thought maybe we could talk about it in relation to Women Who Code or anything like that, because you talked a little bit, Joey, about our member data and privacy. But yeah, Reed, I wanted to know, with governance, how is it enforced? Is there consensus within the industry or in government? And I should point out that while Naomi was talking about a project in Toronto, Naomi is based in Europe. So Joey and I are based in the United States. That's going to be very, very different. And I do know in Europe, there is a regulatory body. But yeah, I'll pass it to you, Joey, to talk about our own context, our own experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And Naomi is actually based in Norway, and that's one of the most heavily regulated data markets in terms of data privacy and information protection, probably in the world. So she has a really strong foundation for talking about these topics. The question you bring up, Rita, is actually one of the trickiest parts of leadership in a kind of a data ecosystem. And the answer is it depends on where you live in terms of the regulatory environment and where your company's based and where your customers are based. So if you have a company or customer base in a place where there is clear data regulation, then you want to make sure that your products, your technical products, and any data ecosystem is set up to comply with that regulatory environment. So in Europe, GDPR is one that prevails. We definitely have members, for example, in Europe, and so we want to make sure that our systems are GDPR compliant, or that we're always working towards being GDPR compliant if we find that something is out of compliance. Some other things to think about, there are certain states, like for example, California has passed data regulation requirements. There are certain municipalities who have passed those. Different countries have different levels of access and different requirements. And so I'll tell you the exercise that we've done at Women Who Code. We looked at where most of our users are. We looked at the required base of where our business is located, where our headquarters is in Georgia in the United States. And so we looked at that regulatory environment and that those compliance regulations. A lot of states have none. And so it's kind of at the will of the company. The Federal Trade Commission in the United States has some laws around making sure that what you say you do is what you actually do. So there are some indirect compliance regulations that you have to think about no matter what state you are in the US. But then we looked at where our members are. So most of the number one place that people access our website from is the United States, followed by countries like Canada, Germany. We have a strong data group there, India. So we have folks kind of around the world in different places accessing our site. But we looked at those big user groups, and our first goal is to make sure that we are data compliant in the markets that we serve. And the way that I would recommend that you approach that if you're starting from the beginning is to pick one sort of foundational country where you have your business located and also a big user group. Make sure that you are data compliant for that market, and then start to look at the next couple of markets. So where else are there strong data regulatory markets? Do you have customers there? Do you have users there? Do you have staff there? Do you have business operations there? If so, make sure that you're compliant in those markets. And really, every market is different. Every market has nuances. Once you get the most stringent regulatory environment compliant, so for example, if you're GDPR compliant and you're California compliant, then you can start to say, okay, what's different? So Germany, for example, has some nuances around data privacy and protection. India is going to have some nuances around that. So then what's different? What are the edge cases you have to solve for? And that way you've covered, by and large, the bulk of your users, and also you're working towards constant compliance. So that's all the technical stuff around regulation. I really want to come back to this thing. And someone in the chat actually mentioned around responsibility. Sarah mentioned around responsibility. As a leader, no matter what the regulatory environment is, I believe that it is our jobs in technology to ensure that we are actively protecting data for any of our users, particularly sensitive data, particularly data that could create harm. And you have to really think through, there are lots of layers of that might not be obvious when you first think about a piece of data. It's really important that we are protecting and retaining trust with our users. For Women Who Code, our community are made of technologists who understand what technology can do. They understand data privacy. They understand how data can be used in the back end. And for us, it's always been paramount that we protect that data and that we never use data in a way that we haven't declared or in a way that would be against the best interest of our community. And if all businesses were operating in that way, you would have a lot more trust in the market. So those are just a few thoughts. I'm happy to unpack this more. And if there are any more specific questions that you want to go into, I'm happy to look to explore those as well.
Let's take one more question as we And then we'll take a brief pause before transitioning to our next talk. But Cindy pointed out that bias begets bias, and then, sometimes the regulatory environments are based on pre-existing biased data, and then you're kind of in a bias loop, and it's hard to crack out of that. So, if, as you mentioned, like the company sometimes has to be the leader and sitting, make the decision for you. So can you talk about any experience connected to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's absolutely right. I think the first thing you have to do is recognize that bias exists. Bias exists in data. There are a lot of kind of streams of thought out there, and we've unpacked these at previous summits and conferences. But there are lots of folks who will say, oh, well, data is different than people. Data, won't lie to you. Data is transparent. Well, that's not true, right? Because humans create data. And as Naomi pointed out, data is just a mirror of a human experience that's happening in the world. And so you have to first acknowledge that bias indeed exists in the systems. And then you have to work to address that bias in the most robust way that you can. And so there are a couple things that I think are really important. One is ensuring access. So really thinking through making sure that audiences have an opportunity to have their data represented. They have an opportunity to opt in. They have an opportunity to access whatever ecosystem you're working within. And then number two, you have to really think through making sure that you have diverse representation across your team who can think about data, use of data in different ways, and making sure that those team members are not only there, you not only have a diverse team, but you have an empowered diverse team all the way across your organization, where you have diverse people in positions of power and influence who are making decisions, who are really be able to elevate issues that they see. And then you have to address them. So where you find bias in data, you have to either adjust your assumptions, recognize that there's bias there, and so the answer that you're getting may or may not be something that you can just move forward with, or you have to address the way that you collect that data. About a year ago, our chief legal officer, myself, and our CEO addressed the United Nations, and they are looking at a gender framework for data throughout the United Nations. So these are a lot of people across the world really looking at data privacy and protection, looking at diversity and bias in data. And one thing that we found that was interesting is that the word gender was used some enormous amount of time, something like 150 times in a document. It was a really high number. I don't remember exactly, but there was never any framework for what they meant by gender inclusion. So in this case, we could clearly see that gender inclusion was important, that data was important, but there was no framework for that. There was no accountability for that. And so what their teams were going to have to face is that they needed a way to clarify what they meant by gender inclusion and had they achieved it. And what they also needed to address was that in thinking solely about gender, they were missing the intersectionality lens of inclusion. And so while they might be including some women, they weren't including all women. And so I think that's a really important piece as well. When you're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in data and bias in data, you also have to really recognize intersectionality and how that's critical to getting any decisions that are equity centered right. In the case of the United Nations, it kind of reminded me of Naomi's story that she was telling about the system that she was trying to set up in Toronto. They had folks on the ground who really knew the communities, and they were able to collect information, and they understood their stories. But by the time it got into the systems, all those different components of bias, whether it was human or things that were built into the system, weren't filtering up into their data ecosystem that was making it back to their technology teams. And so again, recognizing that happens and recognizing how important it is to really know your users and to trust the people who work most closely with and represent those users is really critical.
Actually, there's another interesting question.
Yeah, let's
have a little bit of time. We can get in. People add more questions, because I liked how you brought up culture, and I liked how you brought up all the different areas and like different nuances. But I'm wondering your personal opinion. What is, in terms of education about data privacy, where would you focus your efforts? because Cindy mentions, people give away data, at least in the United States. So I really personally feel it's a huge cultural difference. For example, my opinion is in the US, being free is an important value, and the data part is second, but that's not true for everybody. So what do you think, like, which area of data privacy would you focus kind of education efforts on?
I think if you're just getting started and thinking about data privacy and protection, and a lot of companies in the United States in particular are in that position because the regulatory market is relatively new, although not completely new. So I think if I were just starting out, if you're just starting out and you're thinking about privacy protection, I would say get to know, pick one place that has a really strong data regulatory environment. So GDPR, Europe is a great starting point. California is also a really good starting point. California's data privacy laws are a bit newer, but GDPR has actually been around for a while. It was updated a few years ago, so we all had to go and kind of update our terms of service and update our tech to be able to stay live in Europe. But I would start with something like GDPR and honestly just go read it. Like, go to the actual government website and read it. And what you're going to find out, I think when you hear data compliance and you hear these terms, GDPR, it can seem very overwhelming. Honestly, it's just like learning any new language. But when you go to the government website and you actually just read the policies, it comes down to a few really basic things. Make sure that people get a chance to opt into things. If particularly in Europe, it's an opt-in requirement, where in the United States, it's a little different. It's an opt-out requirement. So that means we have to give you an option to opt out. In Europe, you actually have to give people an option to opt in. So it creates a very different culture around data. But you have to give people a chance to opt in or out, depending on where you live and where your business is located. You have to get people's consent. And honestly, we should be doing that anyway. You have to get people's consent to do things like share their names and likelihoods in imagery and in storytelling. You just have to get people's consent. And you can do those in really simple ways, right? You just ask. You find ways to ask, and you find ways to store those records. And you have to be honest about how you're using the data. So if we tell you that we're collecting your data to be able to recommend an event, we can't then go and sell your data to a third party if we didn't tell you that we might do that. At Women Who Code, we don't sell your data or trade your data in any way, but there are a lot of companies who do. And so you have to make sure that you're honest and upfront with your consumers. And it's really just a very human experience. If you were in person and took away all the technology, you wouldn't sort of pull someone into a room. You'd ask them if they wanted to come into a room. You wouldn't force someone to do something, or you would want to make sure that you had consent and you had permission, and then you would respect their privacy. And so when you're talking about data on scale, I think we sometimes can forget that there are actually people behind it. So where would I start? I would pick one robust data regulation environment. Go and just read what that website says. I think you'll find out that it's actually not as complex as it seems. When you put it into practice, it starts to become more complex, because then you have to say things like, well, how are we going to record the fact that we got consent? How are we going to make sure our systems are set up? You'll start to all of a sudden see all of these big gaps in your processes and procedures that you need to address. Do it one at a time. Figure out where you can make the most impact. Figure out where you could potentially be creating the most harm. Fix those things first. Address those things first. Acknowledge those things first, so that you can then start to work towards correcting those. The other place that you might want to start, particularly if you're in product, you think a lot about your users. Really step back and think, if I were standing in front of these users, or if they were to take what I was doing and publish it sort of on the front page of a newspaper, would you feel proud of that? Would you feel okay about that? What do your users expect of you? And how can you make sure that you're true to them, that you're respecting them, that you're honest with them? And if you're taking that really human lens, I think sometimes that feels really easy for folks, easier than reading regulations sometimes. But I think if you just start from those two angles, your users and kind of one regulatory environment, and just try to understand it, understand what the intent is there, then you'll start to build on your data privacy and information understanding.
Great. Thanks. I wanted to share something that I'm thinking about, and I would love to hear your opinion, because you're talking about opt-in in Europe, opt-out in the US. And one way that for-profits are dealing with this in the US is, like I mentioned before, is that like right now, like Meta-owned products, for example, other products available are free. And so like, is the future then putting, if you want to protect your data, behind a paywall? And I can't stop thinking about the inequities that means, that either people who don't pay can't access the open internet or like the exchange of ideas, or the people can't pay, like they're selling parts of themselves, and the people who can pay are not having to do like that. That's something I'm thinking about a lot, and I would love to know your opinion.
Yeah. That's really tricky, right? Because I think pay to play, as you said, always creates inequities in access. And what you don't want to do, even from a product perspective and a business perspective, is to alienate any of your user groups. And you certainly don't want to be, from an ethical perspective, kind of taking advantage of marginalized communities or communities that can't pay to play. And so I think as we move forward, we're going to have to be looking at different models of revenue generation. I think as a company, a for-profit company, there's always a revenue generation goal. That's the reality of business. But I think some of, particularly like social platforms and things that have just changed the way that we move through the world, I think there is a significant ethics responsibility in terms of both being able to maintain those social networks, which are really critical to a lot of people in a lot of ways, but also to protecting the users that are on there. Do I think that users should start paying for data protection? No, I think that is a reality that's starting to happen. I think that companies should be fully transparent in how they're using data in a way that most people could understand. And then people have the ability to opt in or out of that. And I think that you have to really be thinking about creating access at every action and every opportunity that you're interacting with users. From a Women Who Code perspective, I'll take an example around a paid model. So it costs Women Who Code a significant amount of money to be able to produce the programs and conferences, summits like this one. And so we do have a fee for our tickets, but we also offer scholarships and work with our partners to make sure those get funded. So I think you can create an environment where people who have access, period, if that's the number one goal. If inclusion is at the core, accessibility will also be at the core of how you're thinking about those models.
Thank you so much, Joey.